Hey everybody, it is Prince's Friend, and I am here with another review. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video of all the Prince songs that you all just thought were sexy earlier in the week. I thought that was a really fun one to do. And if you did like that, and also are excited about new reviews, don't forget to hit subscribe and check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at patreon.com/princessfriend, and all of the like. But today we're here for the review of Exodus from the New Power Generation. It was released on May 27th, 1995, and this is the second album released off of the new NPG Records at the time. Goldnigga, which was the first one, was more hip-hop funk, whereas Exodus is actually very much a straight-up funk album. This was where Prince once again kind of stuck to the background, and he didn't take the lead all that much, except for a couple of tracks where he did take lead, and then he also duetted a couple of tracks as well. But this time he did kind of hand the reins of the band over to Sonny T, who I actually wasn't aware was a singer at all. I thought he was just a bass player, but I mean, look at that. I guess he's also a singer. Now, Prince for this album became one of his other alter egos called Tora Tora, and it was basically him wearing black most of the time and a red scarf over his face and a big poofy hat. I mean, it was obviously him. He also used a voice modulator on the album itself in order to deepen his voice, but it was again obviously him on the record. I was actually really pleasantly surprised at how not only well Sonny T sang, but how well his voice and Prince's voice actually kind of mixed together. So I was actually really happy about that. The album actually has 21 tracks, but only 9 of them are songs. So there's a lot of segues on this album. Some of them are funny, some of them are filler, some of them are like two 30-second tracks back to back, and they're totally connected and could have just been one, but they were turned into 2 for no reason. So I mean, what are you gonna do? We're going to ignore the majority of the segues except for one, and we'll talk about that one later, but we're mostly gonna go ahead and focus on the songs here. Now, the title Exodus actually has a few different meanings. This was from interviews with Maite and the rest of the New Power Generation, but they basically came to the idea that the Exodus meant a departure from the way that people always did things, and a departure from the old way of life. And yes, in more literal terms, a departure from one's, record company. But you have to remember, too, at the time, this was Prince really going out and trying to work on different distribution markets and trying to play up different things and seeing how he can get his record out on using the internet, and just a lot of different things that he was kind of the only one doing at the time. Which also then kind of made this a rare album, unless you were in the UK where it got a really good release. But here in the States, it was actually kind of hard to find. But I know that most of you have heard these before. So let's go ahead and get into the tracks, because I can't wait to discuss this with you guys. We start the album off with Maite as a computer in the new city, and it's kind of the beginning of this new virtual world that now Prince is kind of playing in, and this is a theme that he uses pretty much throughout the entire rest of his career. And it's important, right? Because it's not about getting that deal with the record company anymore. It's about leveraging the power of the internet. And so she says that, you have to be smart and you have to be able to get wild. And that's when the song Get Wild comes in. It's a pretty spectacular funk song. The message is pretty straightforward. Come, have a good time, get wild, simple as that. Prince and Sonny T kind of share the lead on this one, but I genuinely enjoy Sonny's crooning as he does on the track. Prince's Get Wild rap is also really amazing, and it gets used again on the remix of Pussy Control, which I love, and of course this came out before Pussy Control, but whatever. But the get wild like you know you need to, pick a funky outfit, show and see through. That's my jam right there. When Get Wild was released as a single in the UK, it did hit number 19, so good job. It was a big deal for NPG Records at the time. It was a small imprint, so hitting number 19 was actually a big deal, and it's a really good song. few segues of the band beating up the DJ for playing records instead of having a live band. Funny enough, the record that the DJ was playing was Dream Factory, which was a scrapped Prince song from years before, and it ended up on Crystal Ball later on, and we'll get to that one soon. But yeah, so we get into New Power Soul from here, which is the album's instrumental track. It feels very similar to Get Wild, but it is a little bit more laid back. There's some really good hornplay in this track, and it just feels fun, right? There's like a lot of joy in this track, and the freedom is there, and you can hear Prince in his prime.
If it was left up to you, I would die in pain. That's why I count the days.
So the segues are of the DJ now introducing Sunny T to some ladies. He takes one back to his house, and then he gets mad because she has the TV on and it's got bad news on it and stuff like that. I found it pretty interesting too that this album invented a new insult that I had never heard before this album, and also never heard again. It's "You're an NBA no ballin' ass nigga."
Oh, NBA no ballin' ass mofo.
And it's so funny because I think insults work better if you don't have to immediately explain what that insult is. So to call somebody an NBA no balling ass nigga, it seems wrong. It's like if I call you an NBA and you don't know what it is, then it's a bad insult. But then this launches into Count the Days, which I think is a pretty amazing song, and it's essentially from the point of view of criminals who kind of both hate their lives of crime and life on the streets and just hoping that one day they won't ever need to do it again. But they know that the other one is counting on them. I really like this because it feels very hip-hop, right? Because there's a lot of songs about, you know, the streets and the poor people and all that stuff, but it's always from a very observant standpoint. But I feel like this song here, even though it's not actually hip-hop, it feels like that same energy because it's not singing about crime. It's talking about it's talking about it in a very personal way, and it's looking at it from the inside, and I really dig this song for that. Also, the acoustic guitar is really great.
The good life, well, babe, that's what I'll be living. Fantasy never hurt nobody, whenever chills the yelling. When the other day gets on your last one, give it up and go to the place in everyone's future. The good life, one day we'll know.
Then we go straight into Good Life, and it's all about what it's like to grow up like dreaming of having money and women and all that junk. Sunny T sings about how he really just used to kind of lose himself in movies and pretend that he was the characters that he loved, the ones that had the good life. He grew up poor with a mom who worked really hard to make sure that he didn't have to turn to drugs and crime, and because she was a good parent, and that's how I grew up, like my mom was a nurse, she worked long days, and me and my brother always lived in a good neighborhood. We didn't always have a lot of money, but we always lived in safe neighborhoods so we could avoid having to fall into a lot of those pitfalls. The Good Life was actually the second single in the UK, but only the first one that the States had because, I don't know, Prince didn't like the States. It sadly didn't chart in either location from what I could find, and I think it could be because this track didn't have enough Prince on it to get people hooked, but I do think that Sunny T and the NPG really did a great job with this song personally.
Cherry, cherry, I think about you every rising sun.
Then, again with no segues, we go right into Cherry Cherry, and this kind of continues the storytelling aspect of the album. We go into a story about a girl named Cherry that Sunny T was into when he was a kid, and the horrible events that happened to her because of the hood that she lived in, abusive boyfriends and suicide are in the song, and they kind of sneak up on you too. Like, this song should really have a trigger warning attached to it, because it's really cheerful and then pretty damn depressing, like way quick. I think it's probably the weakest on the album, but I do like the message behind it.
Nothing to say, unless his name is God. You better get your house in order. It's getting late. The return of the bomb squad is coming your way. Get off big jigger.
So after a segue of the band almost getting hit by a car and they get called broke, we get into Return of the Bump Squad. And this is my second favorite song on the album after Big Fun, mostly because it's just super funky and energetic. I love, first off, as a black man, how the song mentions how bad Magic Shave smells. If you've ever used it, and I have, then oh my god, you know. But it's a funny song, but it's also pretty serious because the Bump Squad are here and they're illuminating the world to the way that things need to be. This means trust in God, learning to play instruments instead of using computers. And don't trust record companies, because if you add an E to rap, it spells rape. It's all very tongue-in-cheek, but it also addresses, I think, something pretty important to Prince at the time. He was getting free, and he kind of wanted to bring others with him. And I think it's a good song, and it's a great message.
Yeah, some corn. Let's see,
right?
stovetop directions.
Yeah, right here. I thought I put some
Empty
food
contents
in
in
the
the
belly,
small
get a little
saucepan.
curve in that slope, you know what I'm saying? Right.
Let me go see if I can find
So
one.
I'm like, go ahead, Toots, order what you
Okay,
like.
and then we get into another segue, but I feel like this one needs to be talked about separately. We're treated to a TV show that Sonny T puts on, and he decides to start cooking himself dinner, and he finds a letter from his girl who's left him, and he gets mad, and she calls him an NBA no-ballin' ass nigga again, and like that's all in the foreground. If you're listening to the vocals, it's the loudest, and it's like that's the biggest thing that you hear. But in the background is what's on the TV, and it's a TV show, and it's Prince, and he's playing some baller, and he's telling his friend about this terrible date that he had with a girl who he ended up throwing mashed potatoes in her face. It's pretty damn hilarious. It takes a few listens to kind of get it all, because there's sound levels, and Sonny T is screaming over the top of some parts of it, but do yourself a favor, you really want to take the time to listen to it, because I laughed my ass off. So Big Fun is my favorite track on the album, mostly due to the chorus line, "Get freaky, let your head bob, get freaky, let your head bob." It's just so funky. The chorus is obviously borrowed for the new Power Soul album in 1997, but again, we're not there yet, so let's talk about Big Fun. This is another track where Prince does the lead vocals, and he promises this woman some incredibly dangerous sex, and then when it's time to do it, she's like, maybe not. So he just plays her some music instead, so I just got the double meaning of let your head bob. Whoa, I've lived with such innocence in my life. Like, this is ridiculous that I just got that. And if you're not getting what I'm saying, they were going to have sex and then they didn't, so her head bobbed instead. Like, anyway, this song is funky, it's rockin', it's long with a bunch of different kind of solos, some guitar, some bass, some keyboards in there. But listen to it over and over, you'll thank me. It's pretty much my favorite.
I don't know. Feels strange. Hallucination Rain. Hallucination Rain.
So after a long segue where Sonny T is once again watching TV, because apparently that's all people do nowadays, he laughs a bunch, and it's funny, but I don't think it's as funny as Mashed Potato Girl. You listen to it, it's called New Power Day. But then Sonny T goes to sleep, and we get into his dreamscape with Hallucination Rain. This song isn't actually sung other than like the chorus. It's mostly Sonny T, and he's speaking over the track because he feels like he's been drugged and is in ecstasy, and he's like, ooh. But at the same time, it actually feels like it's returning to the story of the streets, right? Because Sonny T isn't like, yay drugs! It's more like, these drugs are gonna be so fun, huh? We're gonna do it again, and then we're gonna do it again. Like, kind of depressing. Tommy Barbarella, you can tell, was having some fun with his keyboards in the background of this track, but it's otherwise kind of a depressing track once you kind of get the underlying emotion behind it. It's weird coming on the heels of what was supposed to be like a pretty funny track right before it. And again, I think this was one of the quirks of the album, is that there were stark changes in tone kind of over and over on this album. Here's another one. After Hallucination Rain, Sonny T dreams of like a Star Trek scenario where the NPG are taking over a spaceship, and I mean, it's really, really silly, but it leads us into The Exodus Has Begun. This is a great track to end the album on because it's funky, the horns are on point, it's super epic. It's an epic song that kind of builds and builds. The third verse especially touches on Prince's feelings about Warner Brothers, because he basically says, if everything was equal, then this new power soul wouldn't be so soulful and the water wouldn't be so hot. And he calls the executives at Warner Brothers spatchcocks in blackface offering pennies. Like, whoa. He was not holding back on this album. This song is over 10 minutes long, but it's worth every second. There's some good scratching, great guitar play, the drums are great, the horns rock. It's pretty much like funk perfection in my opinion. And the album ends with Sonny T kind of waking up from his dream and heading out to tell everybody, oh, and you were there and I was there. You know, kind of a Wizard of Oz thing. And it's kind of humorous, but you know, whatever. They could have left it out and I would have been just as happy. So I remember when I got this album, and it was much later than when it actually came out. I believe I got it shortly after Chaos and Disorder came out, so it was a couple of years. And I had to get it imported yet again because no one in my area had it. I had a special order, paid a lot of extra money for it. And then when I got it, I was like, oh man, there's 21 songs on here. Like, I was floored and I was so excited. And then I got it home and I was like, oh, there's not 21 songs on here, there's 9. And honestly, I was kind of pissed. But a little bit later, I came back to it without any preconceived ideas or notions about what I was going to be listening to, and I sat down and I turned it on, and I honestly was blown away. Even the majority of the segues are great for adding mood and tone to the album, and really just kind of showing how much fun they were having. So I think this is a superior album full of amazing funk tracks. I would likely give it 4, maybe 4.5 stars out of 5, mostly due to their inability to edit just a few tracks out. Like, really, like, the songs are good, but it's misleading to the listener, and honestly, I don't know, Cherry Cherry probably could have gotten off of there too. But anyway, great album though. Go ahead and get it. You should listen to it. But I really want to know what you guys thought of this album. I know this was a review that everybody was kind of looking forward to, so let me know what your guys' comments are on Exodus, and let's start that discussion. And may you live to see the dawn. I'm gonna try a bit of reverse psychology on y'all. Don't hit subscribe. Don't hit the bell for notifications. Don't check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon at patreon.com/princessfriend. Just don't. Don't do it, guys.